like the Uyghurs, who will probably do better, at least initially, than some of these other groups. So that is something to consider in this economy. Because of this fear of disillusion and the internal threats and the external threats, it's not surprising we see a rise in Chinese nationalism. It's no longer Mao or the emperor in the middle, it's the businessman. But he's certainly protected by the army, and the minorities and the poor peoples are supposed to gather around. But there are a lot of problems in China. This book blames most of the problems on the West and Westernization. We won't go into that. But all I'll say on the comment on that is that the believers are happy. Though China has become more westernized and degraded by morally, according to these authors, religion is flourishing. Religious believers are generally happy. They're unhappy about being, criticized or being persecuted, some of them. But for the most part, religion is flourishing like never before. And religion has a way of coping with disaster and economic dissolution better than other ideologies, particularly nationalist ideologies. Okay, I'll stop here. I'll do my conclusions very quickly. How will religion fare in this new age of religion in a post-American world? And a rise in religiosity. If you notice, Nathan Yong's new book, participated in a conference, and some of you were involved. We call it Chinese religiosity. That's my title. I haven't checked the sheet. She cited me on that, but I came up with it because I think what we need to look at more in this conference is religious practice. As anthropologists, of course, we can't get inside people's minds so much in terms of ideology, but we can look at practice. And when we talk about Chinese religion or religion in China, a lot of times we're really talking about religiosity. That's how we can talk about Confucianism. Ritual, practice, religiosity. It may not be a religion, we might debate about that, and of course, Zonjiao isn't even a Chinese term. But we can talk about religious-like practice, ritual. That's how we can talk about Minjian Zonjiao, folk religious practice as a cultural system, as Geertz would say. I think the issue, the rise of China, we always have to ask which China, when, where. Not think of China as one monolithic and it's well. Religious diversity is not just Christianity, it's Muslims, Buddhists, etc. And then where Islam will go. I think this whole issue of global Islam is the primary factor. It's not Uyghur radical Islam, it's not Muslim separatist and terrorism. It's this participation in global Islam that is new for China, just like globalization. And so they're not isolated from what's going on. There are Wahhabis, there are Salafis among the Uyghur, and they will continue to challenge the idea not just of China as a nation state and Muslims living under Dar al-Harb, a non-Muslim government, but the Wahhabis, the true Wahhabis, the Osama bin Laden, the Al-Qaeda, the Salafis in Southeast Asia, question the nation, nationalism. That is kafir. That is non-Islam. So any nation, not just China, nationalism itself is wrong in the eyes of God, just as race and tribalism. That's why Malcolm X discovered. Okay, so I will stop. Sorry, I went too long. I probably don't have time for that. You guys have time?
Oh, yeah. Let's have 5 minutes for questions. Anyone? See your name?
So my name is Mariah Reed. I'm an undergraduate at Georgetown University. And I'm particularly interested in what you said before about, or this discussion of China's ability to draw on its different aspects of its nation, especially with regard to its foreign policy. So have there been indications that that the world is watching what's going on with the Uyghurs? Has this influenced foreign policy makers? Do you think all those have the potential to? Where do you see this going?
I think these people, some of them I know, pay more attention not to the world, watching Chinese treatment of its Muslims, they pay attention to the Uyghurs. And as far as I can tell, and I've interviewed some Middle Eastern leaders, including the former Prime Minister of Iran, and former ambassador of Iran to China, in his home in Tehran, when I interviewed him. He told me that they've made it clear to China, that's an internal affair. China does not intercede in their domestic problems, they're not going to intercede. And that is the official government policies of all the Middle Eastern nations about Islam in China. And you'll generally see that in their press as well, because most of those presses are controlled. The one exception is Al Jazeera, which comes out of the Gulf, and that doesn't always represent government policy, so they're a little more independent, although certainly more pro-Islam than Western media. They're doing a new documentary on Islam in China that I'm very excited to see. And they get access, whereas Western media don't get access to Muslims in China. But that does not say anything about the Muslims on the street. So you have the official positions, the official indices, they're not going to ever criticize China in public, or really even in private. I asked them what if it was a massacre or what, because that's China's. And maybe it was just diplomatic speak, but clearly they can't control the popular Muslims on the street, particularly in places like Istanbul. There's a lot of sympathy for the Uyghurs. In North Africa, a lot of issues there, particularly at the Grand Mosque in Cairo, where I met with the Imam there. A lot of way studying there in Al-Azhar in Cairo. So they can't really control popular concern in the Middle East. And that's what could hurt China. Now, interestingly enough, where are many of these Muslim citizens going from the Middle East to work and to travel? To China. The largest population of Iraqis outside of Iraq now is in China. And they can't get into Europe. They can't go to America. They go to China. They do business. And this large, booming Middle Eastern populations in China. And many of these Muslims spend time with Chinese Muslims, particularly Uyghurs in play, and they're very sympathetic. They're also doing business, so they're not going to take any public. But when they go back, they all write their articles about Islam in China, you know, the famous saying of the Prophet, seek knowledge even in China. There's a lot of interest in Islam in China in the Middle East. So I don't know that they really, the governments can't control it. But insofar as preserving their relationship with China, they're never going to take a position like the United States, public on matters of religious freedom, like Tibet, or things like that. You'll never see it, I don't think. Even Turkey doesn't criticize China.
I wonder if you just talk, I had a question from someone who had heard that there were actual mass conversions in villages in eastern China, and I've never heard anything like that, but from what you're saying, it sounds as though it's much more of a very slow process. So it seems as though the ethnic communities of the